Any move to increase taxes will always be viewed with some resistance that government is passing the buck to Singaporeans when actually it can afford to dip into the reserves. Yes. How do you address that question? And is there room for any sort of modification to the NIR framework so that we can get more out of our reserves?
Right. Well, we shouldn't rule out modifications over time, particularly when it comes to the point when we need more revenues. But first of all, in fact, it's not widely recognized that we are drawing on our reserves each year for our budget through the framework of drawing on the income from reserves. We made a major adjustment in 2008 to be able to draw more income from our reserves, and it's quite substantial. 2% of GDP, or in fact more than 2% of GDP each year as revenue from reserves. Is it too conservative? Not clearly so. The reason why we don't want to simply draw down on reserves is because then this whole approach of being able to give Singaporeans benefit by drawing income from reserves perpetually will be weakened. We'll be able to do it for some time, but for future generations, they will not have this advantage. It's of benefit to the average Singaporean because it's how we've been able to keep income taxes very low for the broad majority. In fact, the majority don't pay income taxes, and even the upper middle income group pays very little income taxes. Keep GST at 7% for as long as we can, and not have to raise other new taxes for the majority. We'll have to raise some taxes for the top end, but for the majority, we're able to keep it relatively low by international standards with this advantage of getting 2% of GDP from reserves. So try and keep that going for as long as we can.
Would you ever consider maybe looking at land sales, maybe taking a percentage of what it contributes directly to budget?
The reason why we don't spend all our revenues from selling land or the gains from selling land is actually the land is already part of our reserves. And selling the land is just converting it from one form to another. It enters into our financial reserves, but it's already part of our reserves. So to simply spend when you are able to sell and monetize the land is actually a drawdown on reserves. So all we are doing is we are keeping the proceeds in our reserves. They were part of our reserves. You sell it, it becomes and takes a financial form. You keep it in part of our reserves, and then we spend the income from our reserves. So it's the same basic discipline. Preserve the size of the reserves, draw income each year within a disciplined framework so as to support the budget. And the real question is, are we drawing enough with this 50% rule? And that's something we can relook over time.